The man in the slate suit didn't knock, he measured. Tripod laser clipboard and a smile that said he'd done this 100 times. 7 days to comply, or we remove the porch, he announced, planting a flimsy notice on the rail my grandfather built. One problem, my cabin sits 200 feet outside their jurisdiction. I'd verified the boundary, the deed, the 1,973 permit twice. Still, his badge flashed plastic, his QR code failed, and his driver's plate matched nothing in the county directory. I've spent 20 years exposing paper-thin authority. I know a staged performance when I see one. So I took the photos, logged the timestamps, and brewed extra coffee. If they came back, I'd be waiting with certified records, a live camera, and a community chat that doesn't scare easily. They picked the wrong address. More importantly, they picked the wrong narrator. Before we dive in, drop your location and local time in the comments. When I bought back my old home in Northern Virginia, I thought I was closing the final chapter of my career and opening something quieter mornings with coffee on the porch. My grandmother built afternoons restoring cedar siding that hadn't been touched since the Carter administration. But 3 weeks after moving in, the first envelope arrived, no postage, no seal, just my name printed in block letters, notice of violation, immediate response required. Inside was a fine for unauthorized exterior modifications and a demand that I join the Maplewood Estates HOA to preserve community standards. I laughed out loud. My house sat on the old county line, 212 feet, outside their jurisdiction, a fact confirmed by the land surveyor, my attorney, and even the county clerk herself. I'd kept every document in a waterproof binder. Still, seeing that paper sparked something deeper than annoyance. It was arrogance, pure and simple, the same kind I'd spent 2 decades documenting as an investigative journalist. They counted on fear, confusion, and apathy. Unfortunately for them, I had none of those left. The next morning, I stood at the end of my gravel driveway as a black Lincoln rolled up. The man from before stepped out, gray suit, wrinkled at the elbows, carrying the same clipboard. "Mr. Walker," he said smoothly, "your compliance window is closing." "My what?" I asked. "Your compliance window. You're required to register with Maplewood Estates Homeowners Association before we initiate enforcement." I smiled, the kind of smile I used to give crooked developers before pressing record on my phone. "You're trespassing. This property isn't in your HOA. It never was." He didn't blink. "Our records disagree. Then your records are wrong." He tapped the paper. "Failure to comply will result in demolition of unapproved structures." I glanced at the porch rail where my grandmother used to rest her teacup. "You're threatening to tear down history. That'll go great in tomorrow's county paper." For the first time, his expression cracked. "Sir, there's no need to escalate." I raised my phone. "Smile for the evidence file." He turned, muttered something about further action, and drove off. By noon, I had the county assessor on speakerphone. "Maplewood Estates has no legal reach over your parcel," she confirmed. "Their recorded boundary ends at the creek. Anything beyond that is private land." She even emailed me an official GIS map showing the red line stopping well before my fence. I printed 3 copies. But something about the encounter nagged at me. The man hadn't seemed like a typical HOA volunteer, too polished, too rehearsed. His badge had no hologram, and the QR code on his form linked to an empty domain. It felt manufactured. I'd seen the pattern before: phony inspectors, fake fines, confidence scams dressed in bureaucracy. That evening, I drove through Maplewood Estates to observe. It looked peaceful: manicured lawns, pastel mailboxes, flags fluttering under porch lights. But then I noticed the signs "Private HOA Enforcement Zone" printed on plastic, not metal, bolted into the ground with hardware store screws. Cheap, temporary, meant to look official from a distance. I snapped photos, time-stamped each one, and kept driving. At the end of the main street, I found a small maintenance shed with the HOA's name stenciled on the door. A man in a red vest was smoking outside. "You the new guy from compliance?" he asked casually. "Something like that," I said. He chuckled. "Yeah, they've been busy lately. New management company took over Faircrest Property Solutions or something. Whole operation's weird. No board meetings, no open votes. Just these inspectors showing up with clipboards." My pulse quickened. "When did that start?" 6 months ago, he said. "They said we were behind on dues. I've lived here 20 years, never missed a payment." He dropped his cigarette, stomped it out. "Now, they want cash only." Back home, I looked up Faircrest Property Solutions, a limited liability company registered out of Delaware with a P.O. box for an address. No officers listed, no website, yet they claimed to manage 6 neighborhoods in the county. It stank of shell operations, one of those front entities people use to shuffle money and dodge liability. At midnight, a motion alert pinged my phone. Someone was on my property. I pulled up the camera, feed two figures in reflective vests walking along my fence line with a measuring device. One of them was the man from earlier, the other a woman with a tablet snapping photos. I stepped outside, quietly flashlight in hand. Evening, I said. They froze. The man recovered first. We're conducting a setback verification. On private property under HOA authorization. You mean forged authorization? I replied, holding up my phone. The flashlight beam caught the woman's badge laminated plastic again. Sir, interfering with inspection is a finable offense, she said stiffly. Then fine me. I stepped closer, reading the faint text on her badge. The serial number ended in 001. I smiled. First issue, huh? They exchanged a glance, then retreated toward their car. I followed them to the street, filming the whole time. The plate read FCR 1289. I uploaded the footage to a cloud folder and sent a copy to my attorney just in case. The next morning, I filed a complaint with the county sheriff. The deputy, young polite, took notes. We've had a few calls like this, he admitted. Same car, same fake HOA. What happens next? I asked. We'll investigate, he said. But without proof of financial loss, it's tricky. Proof I could handle. That afternoon, I posted on the neighborhood forum. If anyone's been contacted by Maplewood Estates, HOA, or Faircrest Property Solutions, message me. They're impersonating officials. Within an hour, replies flooded in. They tried to fine me for repainting my fence. 2 people showed up demanding $5,000 for landscaping. They said I'd lose my house if I didn't pay. By sunset, I had 6 testimonies. By midnight, I had 12. The pattern was unmistakable: fake documents, fake inspections, real fear. They weren't just targeting me, they were preying on anyone too overwhelmed to question authority. I pinned a photo of my grandmother above the evidence board on my wall. She'd built this porch with her own hands, teaching me to measure twice and trust once. Her voice echoed in my memory. If someone claims ownership of what's yours, make them prove it. That was exactly what I intended to do. The next day, I walked into county records with a folder of documents, 3 USB drives, and enough caffeine to power a newsroom. I wasn't just going to stop them from tearing down my porch. I was going to uncover the entire operation behind this counterfeit HOA empire. The county building smelled like old paper, disinfectant, and bureaucracy, a scent I'd known my entire career. I signed in at the front desk, passed through the metal detector, and climbed the stairs to the Department of Land Use and Property Records. Behind the counter sat a woman in her early 40s, glasses balanced on the edge of her nose nameplate, reading D. Morgan. She looked up when I approached. How can I help you? I need to verify the jurisdiction boundaries for Maplewood Estates HOA, I said, setting down my folder. And I'd like to know whether Faircrest Property Solutions has any registered authority in this county. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Give me a minute. The screen reflected in her lenses as she typed. Maplewood Estates. Here we go. Official boundary filed in 1984, Last Amendment 2011. No extensions, no annexations since then. She turned the monitor toward me. See that line, County Parcel 78B through 85D, that's the edge. What's your address? I told her. She traced a finger along the map. You're more than 200 feet outside the line. They have no legal jurisdiction over your property whatsoever. Thought so, I said. Now Faircrest, she frowned, typing again. That's odd. She clicked twice, leaned closer to the screen. They're not registered as a property management company here. In fact, the name doesn't appear on any business license, tax filing, or zoning application in the entire county. So they're ghosts. Or fraudsters, she replied dryly. If someone's issuing citations or fines under that name, you should talk to the sheriff. I already did, I said. He told me to get documentation, then I'll print you certified copies. She pressed a button, and the printer began spitting out maps, boundary descriptions, and legal statutes. Each page bore an embossed county seal. She stamped the final one with a heavy steel press, the sound echoing like punctuation. This is your legal shield, she said. If they show up again, wave this at them or better film it. Already on it, I said. I thanked her and left, but as I walked to my truck, a man in a navy windbreaker stepped from behind a column. Late 50s, sharp eyes. You're the journalist right I used to be, I said carefully. Who's asking? Deputy Inspector Lawson County Code Enforcement. We got word you're dealing with some fake inspectors. He showed me a badge, real metal hologram seal, the kind that catches light like credibility. Mind if we talk? We sat on a bench outside the courthouse. I handed him a copy of my evidence folder. He flipped through the photos, stopping at the one showing the man in the gray suit. "I've seen this guy," he muttered. "We've had reports in 3 other districts. Same car, same clipboard, different names. He poses as a compliance officer, collects payments, then disappears. Usually, targets seniors." My stomach tightened. "So it's organized. Looks that way. There's probably a small network, a couple of runners, fake paperwork printers, and someone handling the money flow. Once they get a victim to settle in cash or online transfer, it's gone. No trace." He tore a page from his notebook and scribbled a number. "That's my direct line. If they contact you again, call me first. Don't confront them alone." I nodded, but I knew I would anyway. That night, the wind picked up, bending the pines near the fence line. Around 9 headlights swept across my yard. The Lincoln again. I turned off the porch light and crouched behind the curtain. 2 silhouettes stepped out, one male, one female. They walked to the porch, taped another envelope to the railing, and retreated fast. When their taillights vanished, I stepped out and peeled the paper free. This one was more elaborate, official letterhead embossed seal imitation, even a signature director of compliance, Faircrest Property Solutions. The fine had jumped to $18,700. It claimed non-compliance with HOA structural integration policy. I laughed bitterly. Structural integration. They were getting creative. The next morning, I drove straight to Lawson's office. He examined the document, then held it under a magnifying lamp. "Cheap laser print," he said. "Inkjet seal. Whoever made this knows just enough about official formatting to fool someone skimming." He pulled a tablet from his desk drawer and began scanning. "Let's check the QR code." A loading bar blinked, then the result flashed. "Error 404, domain not found." He looked up at me. "Classic ghost domain scam. They spin up a fake website for 30 days, harvest money, then shut it down. Can we trace the payments maybe if someone actually paid? Most victims don't come forward until months later." He set the paper aside. "Tell you what, let's set a trap." That got my attention. "A trap," he nodded. "We'll draft a dummy notice, official looking, but tagged with a forensic watermark and a hidden tracking link. If they try to replicate it or send it back to you, we'll trace the printer ID and IP source." "Sounds like my kind of journalism," I said. We spent the next 2 hours crafting the bait, a mock compliance confirmation letter, thanking me for my payment and requesting follow-up verification. Lawson encoded a digital tracer in the QR code and embedded metadata invisible to the naked eye. Then he sealed the envelope and handed it to me. "Leave this in plain sight on your porch," he said. "They'll come for it." I did exactly that. For 3 nights, nothing happened. Then on the 4th motion, sensors went off again, 2:13 a.m. 2 figures, same Lincoln, same pattern. They approached the porch, took the envelope, and left within 40 seconds. I didn't move, just watched the feed and noted the timestamp. By morning, Lawson had already called. "They took the bait," he said. "We got a ping from a copier registered to a rented office suite downtown. The metadata confirms the same printer used to create your fake fines. We met at the address, an unmarked glass building beside a shuttered grocery store. The directory listed Faircrest Property Solutions Suite 208. Inside the suite looked abandoned, empty desks, dusty chairs, and a faint smell of toner, but one corner still glowed with the light of a running computer. Lawson photographed everything, then shut down the machine carefully. "We'll pull the hard drive," he said. "See who's behind this." I scanned the bulletin board above the desk. Pinned, there were neighborhood maps color-coded with pins, my street circled in red, several others marked in yellow. Victims, probably. There were also invoices, drafts of fake letters, and a ledger showing payments ranging from $2,000 to $12,500. "They've been running this for over a year," Lawson murmured. On the desk lay a small receipt book. The last entry caught my eye. Vivian Ash 3200 porch compliance fee. The name struck me instantly. It matched one of the usernames from the forum thread, the woman who'd written. They scared me into paying. I photographed the page. She's real. She's local. Lawson closed the evidence folder. "Then she's our first witness." That night I found her address through public records, a small white bungalow 2 streets over. I parked outside, lights off, and waited until her porch light flickered on. Then I knocked. A woman in her late 60s opened the door. Her eyes were wary but kind. "Can I help you, Mrs. Ash?" She nodded slowly. "My name's Daniel Walker. You posted about Faircrest Property Solutions." Her expression changed from caution to dread. "Oh no," she whispered. They're coming back, aren't they? Not if I can help it, I said. But I need your story. She opened the door wider and motioned me in. The living room smelled of lavender and old books. On her coffee table lay a folder labeled Receipts. She handed it to me with trembling hands. They said if I didn't pay, they'd put a lien on my house. I didn't know who to call. I gave them $3,000, cash. I flipped through the folder receipts, stamped with the same fake logo photos of the same gray-suited man. It was all there. Evidence, fear, and proof of a system that thrived on intimidation. I looked at her. Mrs. Ashe, you just became the reason this ends. Vivian Ashe poured tea with hands that still trembled slightly the way people do when they've spent too long waiting for someone to believe them. Her house was modest but neat. Lace curtains, family photos, an Afghan draped over the sofa. I used to teach English at the high school, she said softly. Retired 3 years ago. I thought buying this place would be peaceful. Then those people came. I listened as she told me everything. 2 months ago, the same pair, a man in a gray suit and a woman in a red blazer, had arrived unannounced. They introduced themselves as compliance officers from Faircrest Property Solutions, claiming Maplewood Estates had annexed her block. They handed her an official-looking letter citing non-conforming porch dimensions and demanded an immediate payment of $3,200 to avoid demolition and court fees. Vivian had panicked. Her husband had passed the year before. She lived alone and hated confrontation. She paid in cash. Afterward, the fear didn't stop. They sent text messages, automated reminders with a countdown timer. She showed me her phone. Final notice. Failure to cooperate may result in lien filing and foreclosure proceedings. Pay immediately to avoid legal escalation. The message included a link to maplewood-securepay.com, a sleek but fake website I recognized instantly as a phishing portal. Vivian had never clicked it. I just wanted it to end, she said, voice shaking. I leaned forward. Mrs. Ashe, I have reason to believe this is part of an organized scam. You're not the only one. I've documented several other victims. Her eyes widened. Others. At least a dozen, I said. And they're targeting people just like you, homeowners outside the HOA boundary, usually retired or living alone. Vivian clasped her hands together, her knuckles white. So what do? We build a case. Together. She hesitated, then nodded. I still have the camera footage from that day. My son installed a doorbell cam after the break-in last winter. It caught everything. That was more than I could have hoped for. We spent the next hour transferring the videos to my external drive. The footage was clear. 11:42 a.m. The black Lincoln pulling up, the man and woman walking to her porch, the clipboard, the exchange, and finally Vivian handing over an envelope of cash. I paused the video. This is gold. The timestamps, the faces, everything. Vivian swallowed hard. I thought about going to the police, but they looked so official. I didn't want to get in trouble. I placed my hand on the table. They count on that fear, Vivian, but not anymore. When I left her house, the late afternoon light had turned the street golden. A delivery truck rumbled past, scattering leaves. In the distance, kids played basketball on a cracked driveway. Ordinary life continuing, unaware of the quiet predators circling its edges. Back home, I called Lawson. We've got a witness, I said. Good, he replied. Bring me everything you have tomorrow. And keep her identity quiet. If this group is as organized as I think, they'll know when someone talks. I spent that night building the first version of the case map, a wall of documents, photos, receipts, and video stills connected by red string and thumbtacks like something out of an old newsroom. Vivian's video sat at the center, surrounded by copies of the forged notices and domain screenshots. The pattern was emerging clearly. Now one fake HOA, multiple neighborhoods, systematic extortion. By 1 a.m., I was exhausted but wired. I poured another cup of coffee and opened a fresh document titled The Faircrest Files. Old habits die hard. My fingers fell into their familiar rhythm: chronology, cross-references, source verification, narrative clarity. I wasn't just collecting evidence anymore. I was writing an exposé. The next morning, Lawson and I met at the sheriff's office. He'd already secured a digital forensics warrant for the computer we'd found in the abandoned office. We got a hit, he said, motioning me into the evidence room. The drive's clean except for one encrypted folder. My tech cracked it last night. You'll want to see this. Inside were spreadsheets labeled by neighborhood: Maplewood Estates, Ridgeview Terrace, Laurel Glen. Each contained names, addresses, phone numbers, and worst of all, payment amounts. Some even had paid marked beside them, dated months apart. They've pulled in over $70,000, Lawson said grimly. And that's just what we can see. I felt my jaw tighten. They've been at this for over a year. He nodded. We're contacting victims quietly one by one. If we move too soon, they'll vanish. But if we coordinate, we can take the whole network down. I can help, I said. Lawson looked at me, studying my expression. You're not a cop. No, I said, but I'm a storyteller, and these people thrive in silence. If you want witnesses, you'll need someone who can make them feel heard. He considered it, then gave a small nod. Fine, but keep it controlled. No public posts yet. We need chain of custody on every document. We shook hands. It felt like the start of something larger, part investigation, part redemption. That afternoon I called Vivian. They're taking this seriously, I told her. Does that mean they'll arrest them? Eventually. But first, we need every victim to come forward. Do you know anyone else who got those letters? She paused. Mrs. Levin, 2 houses down. She's 81. She told me men in suits came and measured her fence last month. I think she paid, too. Can you introduce me? Tomorrow morning, she said. 9 sharp. When I hung up, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Walker, continued interference with HOA. Compliance procedures will result in immediate lien action. You have 48 hours. The message included another fake link. I smiled. They were getting desperate. I forwarded the text to Lawson. New message. Same burner. His reply came instantly. We're tracing it now. Good work. Stay cautious. That evening, as dusk rolled in, I sat on my porch with my camera still recording. The roses my grandmother had planted decades ago swayed gently in the breeze. This place wasn't just real estate, it was memory, blood, and time. And I'd be damned if I let a forged seal and a rented Lincoln erase it. Tomorrow I'd knock on Mrs. Levin's door and keep the chain growing, one neighbor at a time, one truth at a time. Because once fear loses, its grip, fraud collapses. And I was just getting started. Mrs. Levin's front porch sagged slightly at the edges, the paint peeling in sun-bleached streaks. She was waiting for us when we arrived, Vivian by my side, her blue scarf fluttering in the morning breeze. The old woman was sharp-eyed despite her years, her posture straight, her voice clear. Vivian said you wanted to talk about those inspectors, she said. I knew they were crooks the moment they opened their mouths. I smiled, relieved. Then you're ahead of most people, ma'am. Could you tell me exactly what happened? She ushered us inside. Her living room was a museum of family photos and hand-stitched quilts. It was early August, she began. 2 of them came, man and woman, wearing those neon vests like road workers. They said the HOA had updated its compliance ordinances and my fence was too close to the sidewalk. They measured, took pictures, then told me I owed a $4,000 setback fee. Vivian gasped. They told me the same thing, Mrs. Levin nodded. I told them my property wasn't part of any HOA, and the woman smiled that cold, practiced smile and said, That's about to change. Then she handed me a paper and said I had 72 hours before legal action. Did you pay? I asked. She smirked. No, dear. I told them I was 81, not stupid. But they left a card, and my neighbor Harold next door, he wasn't so lucky. Paid them $2,500 in cash. Said they threatened to tear down his carport. Can I talk to Harold? Her expression dimmed. He passed away 2 weeks later. Heart attack. His daughter's cleaning out the place. She might still have the receipts. My chest tightened. Victims didn't just lose money, they lost peace, maybe even lives shortened by stress and fear. We thanked Mrs. Levin and walked to Harold's house next door. Boxes were stacked on the porch, the door open. Inside, a young woman in her 30s sorted through papers. You must be Daniel Walker, she said when I introduced myself. Mom mentioned someone might come by. Dad was terrified after those people came. He thought he was about to lose everything. She handed me an envelope from a kitchen drawer. Inside were 3 receipts, identical in format, to Vivian, stamped with the fake Faircrest Property Solutions logo signed by Inspector Fallon Reeves. That name made me pause. You recognize it? Vivian asked. Yes. I saw it in the metadata folder Lawson found on their computer. Fallon Reeves, one of the 2 suspects we've been tracking. I photographed each document, careful to capture the serial numbers. The daughter wiped her eyes. If this helps catch them, take whatever you need. Outside, Vivian looked shaken. Do you think they know we're talking to people? Maybe, I admitted. But if they're watching, they'll realize the story's slipping out of their control, and that's when scammers make mistakes. We spent the rest of the afternoon canvassing the block. 5 houses in, I found another couple who'd received the same letter. The pattern had become mathematical, same phrasing, same fonts, same threat timeline. It was practically a script. By evening, I had 12 new statements, 6 printed notices, and 2 recorded testimonies on video. I emailed everything to Lawson, then opened my front door and froze. A manila envelope lay on my welcome mat. No name, no postage. Just a single line scrawled across the front. Stop digging. Inside was a photo of me leaving the sheriff's office that morning, zoomed in from across the parking lot. Someone had been watching. I took a deep breath, scanned the photo under my desk lamp. In the reflection of a car window, I could see part of a license plate J849KZ, same pattern as the Lincoln's plate series. They were escalating. I forwarded the image to Lawson. We've got surveillance. His reply came within minutes. Stay inside tonight. I'm sending a cruiser by your street. Don't engage. But I didn't listen. Instead, I set up my own trap. I positioned 3 cameras, one above the garage, one in the mailbox post, and one angled from my kitchen window. Then, I left a decoy envelope labeled Certified County Evidence on the porch railing. Inside was a GPS tracker the size of a coin taped beneath a printed report about Faircrest. At 2:01 a.m., motion alerts woke me. 2 figures, again gray suit, red blazer. They approached cautiously, scanning the yard with flashlights. The woman lifted the envelope, looked around, and tucked it into her folder. They turned to leave. Gotcha. The tracker pinged 3 blocks away, then 5, then a mile. They stopped at an office park on Harrison Boulevard. The signal held steady near Suite 104. I called Lawson immediately. They took the bait, I whispered. Stay put, he said. We'll handle it. I stayed on the line as he relayed instructions to units over the radio. Sirens faint in the distance grew louder, closer, until I saw blue and red reflections flicker on my living room walls. 20 minutes later, Lawson called back. We've got eyes on the vehicle. Lincoln Continental black plate J849KZ. Matches your photo. My heart pounded. And the suspects? He paused. They bolted when we pulled up. Left a laptop printer and a folder full of fake documents. We're collecting everything, but we'll need you to ID them. The next morning I met Lawson at the impound lot. The Lincoln sat behind a chain-link fence, its trunk half-open evidence markers fluttering in the breeze. Inside were stacks of glossy flyers, printed HOA enforcement notices, blank forms ready to fill. But what stopped me cold was a handwritten list taped inside the glove compartment. 34 addresses. Every one of them belonged to someone outside the HOA boundary. Lawson exhaled through his teeth. Looks like you uncovered a full-blown racket. I studied the list and recognized several names, Vivian, Mrs. Levin, even Harold's daughter's address. They were cataloging victims, I said. Systematic targeting. He nodded grimly. We'll get warrants for every name connected to this car-registered owner rental agency storage unit. You've done more groundwork than most detectives. Let's finish it, I said. By the time I drove home, exhaustion had settled deep into my bones. But something else burned beneath it, a sense of responsibility. I wasn't just a retired journalist anymore. I was part of a story that demanded resolution. As the sun dipped behind the trees, I pinned the new evidence to my wall, the receipts, the address list, the surveillance photo. My grandmother's portrait hung above it all, her eyes steady, as if reminding me why I started this. They'd chosen the wrong porch to threaten. By the next morning, the story had already begun to grow legs of its own. The county sheriff's office confirmed that the black Lincoln was stolen from a car rental agency under a false name. The ID used to rent it. Clayton Rohr matched one of the signatures on the fake violation notices we'd collected. Lawson called me around 8:30 a.m. They're not amateurs, he said. They've got multiple shell identities, prepaid phones, offshore registered domains. But we've finally got a trail. I stood on my porch, coffee cooling in my hand. You've got their faces, their car, and the documents. What's next? Building the prosecution file, he replied. We'll need testimony from victims to strengthen the fraud charges. Think you can help us round them up? That was the moment I realized this had stopped being my story. It had become our fight. Give me a list, I said. I'll get them talking. Within 2 days, Vivian and I organized a small meeting at her house. 6 neighbors came, most of them nervous at first, clutching receipts and printouts. I started by showing them the official county boundary map and the affidavit Lawson had provided confirming the scam. The room was quiet for a beat, and then an older man spoke up. I thought I was the only fool who fell for it, he said. They told me my shed violated setback laws. I paid $3,000. Another woman, a single mother in her 40s, nodded. They called me every day for a week, said they'd sue if I didn't pay for community drainage upgrades. I almost sent the money. Vivian placed a comforting hand on her arm. You're not alone anymore. I recorded every testimony with consent, and compiled them into a single folder for Lawson's team. But what struck me most wasn't the evidence. It was the tone in the room. Shame, fear, anger, all melting into something sharper unity. When the meeting ended, I walked outside and found Vivian gazing at her rose bushes. "They bloomed early this year," she said softly. "Maybe it's a sign things are turning." Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered out of reflex. A man's voice, calm and clipped. "You think you're a hero, Mr. Walker. You're playing with something bigger than you realize." I recognized the cadence instantly, the gray suit man. "You should know," I said evenly. "Threats go poorly for people who leave evidence." He chuckled. "Evidence can disappear. People can too." The line went dead. For a long moment, I just listened to the wind rustle through the oaks. Then I hit record on a voice memo and described the call in detail. I'd learned long ago documentation kills intimidation. That night, Lawson installed a temporary security patrol near my property. But he also brought something else, an FBI liaison. "They're stepping in," Lawson told me, because some of those fake websites were hosted on servers tied to interstate identity theft rings. This isn't just local HOA fraud anymore. The agent introduced herself as Special Agent Ruiz, a woman in her late 30s with dark hair and the kind of calm that comes from years of federal casework. She flipped through my evidence, wall eyes sharp. "You did half our work for us," she said. "What we need now is digital forensics and corroboration." Dashiell, my son, had driven down from Richmond that morning. He'd heard about the threats and insisted on helping. When he met Ruiz, the two dove straight into technical talk, metadata strings, IP hopping, digital certificates. Within an hour, Dashiell cracked the trace. "These guys aren't just stealing from homeowners," he explained. "They're collecting bank details and social security numbers from those fake payment sites. That's identity theft on a federal level." Ruiz nodded. "Which means we can bring serious charges, wire fraud, computer crime impersonation of public officials. But we need one final connection to tie their operation to a physical location." Dashiell pointed at the tracker data on his laptop. The Lincoln stopped at a warehouse outside Fredericksburg 3 times in the last month. GPS logs from the bait envelope confirm it. Ruiz raised an eyebrow. "You still have access," he grinned. "Real-time feed." 2 hours later, we were parked half a mile from that warehouse, unmarked vehicles in the trees, radio silence, except for the occasional whisper from Lawson's mic. Through binoculars, I saw a man roll up the bay door and wheel out a printer the size of a dishwasher. A woman followed, clipboard in hand. The same woman from the porch, the red blazer. Ruiz muttered into her radio, visual confirmation. Suspects Reeves and Rower on site, proceeding with warrant. The team moved fast, 5 agents, tactical precision. Within minutes, they had both suspects in custody. The sound of zip ties snapping echoed faintly across the field. Ruiz waved me forward once it was clear. Inside, the warehouse looked like a counterfeiter's dream, rows of laptops, boxes of blank letterhead, stacks of fake badges, even rolls of metallic stickers mimicking county seals. On one wall hung a corkboard eerily similar to my own evidence map, except theirs tracked targets. My name was circled in red ink. "Looks like you made their priority list," Ruiz said dryly. I studied the board. Each address had notes: elderly, recent home sale, widowed. Predators don't hunt randomly, they profile. Lawson found a safe tucked behind a shelf. Inside were cash bundles, prepaid debit cards, and 2 passports, both fake. But the photos were unmistakable. Clayton Ruhr and Fallon Reeves. "They were planning to disappear," Lawson said. "You stopped them just in time." Ruiz bagged everything. "We'll process the evidence and hold them for federal interrogation. Daniel, your testimony will be essential when this goes to court." When the agents led the pair out, Fallon glanced at me. Her voice was barely a whisper. "We never hurt anyone." I shook my head. "You destroyed people's peace. That's worse." Clayton glared, jaw clenched. "You think you won, but someone else will replace us." "Maybe," I said. "But now the world knows what to look for." Back home that night, Vivian called me, her voice trembling with cautious hope. "Lawson just stopped by," she said. "He told me they arrested them." "Is it true?" "It's over," I replied. "At least this chapter." I stepped onto my porch, the boards creaking underfoot, and looked toward her house where the roses glowed faintly under the porch light. For the first time in weeks, the night felt still. I thought of my grandmother's voice again. "When they threaten what's yours, make them prove it." We had, and they couldn't. But as I glanced at the horizon, I knew this wasn't the end. It was the start of accountability. Tomorrow, there would be statements, courtrooms, and perhaps headlines. And for the first time in years, I didn't dread the story. I was ready to tell it. The morning after the arrests, I woke to the kind of quiet that feels unreal. No engines idling outside, no motion alerts, no phantom knocks on the door. Just birds whine through the pines and the slow creak of my porch chair as I leaned back with a mug of coffee. The sun was already warm, glinting off the brass plate I'd nailed above the steps built by Eleanor Walker, 1973. My grandmother's name. Her legacy was safe again. Then my phone buzzed. From Special Agent Ruiz, subject: evidence confirmation and press inquiry. Daniel, expect media outreach today. Someone leaked the arrest report to local outlets. We'll coordinate messaging, don't disclose active case details. You'll be credited as a primary witness and civilian investigator. I exhaled slowly. So it had begun. Once a story surfaces, it takes on a life of its own, and after decades of chasing other people's scandals, I suddenly found myself inside one. Within hours, a reporter from the Fredericksburg Chronicle stood on my driveway, young, nervous, probably her first big assignment. "Mr. Walker, could I get a comment on the HOA impersonation arrests?" she asked. I nodded. "Just make sure you spell their victims' names right. They're the ones who deserve the headline." She smiled. "That's actually why I'm here. We'd like to tell the community how you exposed it, how it started." I hesitated, glancing at the roses at the porch that had started this all. "It started with a fake piece of paper," I said. "And it ended because people stopped being afraid to question it." Her pen froze mid-sentence. "That's powerful. It's truth," I replied. She left after 10 minutes, promising to handle the story carefully. But within a day, it had gone viral, far beyond careful hands. The headline read, "Retired journalist uncovers HOA fraud ring, local residents scammed of $80,000." TV vans appeared by noon. Strangers slowed their cars to point at my house. Online forums buzzed with theories. Some commenters called me a hero. Others accused me of fabricating the story for fame. I ignored both camps. The only validation that mattered was Vivian's voice when she called that evening. "They refunded me," she said, crying. "Lawson delivered a cashier's check. Said the court ordered restitution already. I thought that never happens in real life." "It does, when the evidence is airtight," I said, smiling. "And when people like you refuse to stay silent. But not everyone found closure so quickly." A week later, a man named Robert Keyes knocked on my door, mid-50s, mechanic's jacket, calloused hands. "You're Walker, right? The guy who busted the fake HOA, that's me." He pulled a wrinkled notice from his pocket. "I think they hit me 2 months ago. Said I owed a street maintenance fee. I paid $2,000 cash. Didn't realize it was fake till I saw your story." "Come in," I said. "You're not the only one." We spent an hour at my kitchen table while I helped him draft a statement for Lawson's expanding file. Each new testimony added another thread to the tapestry of proof, and with every voice the scam unraveled further. But something still bothered me. During the arrest, Clayton had said, "Someone else will replace us." It wasn't just bravado, it was warning. Scams like these never die, they mutate. That thought led me to Dashiell's temporary workstation upstairs. He'd stayed a few extra days helping Ruiz's tech team process data from the seized laptops. "Hey, Dad," he said, looking up from his screen. "You're going to want to see this." He turned his laptop toward me. On the monitor was a spreadsheet extracted from Clayton's computer, a client list. Not victims, partners. Property Enforcement Consulting, PEC. Dashiell explained. "It's a fake business network they use to launder funds and subcontract regional scams. And here's the kicker. There's another branch registered 2 counties south under a different name, Cedarline HOA Management. Same directors, same shell company, routing numbers. So it wasn't just Maplewood Estates." "No," he said grimly. "They were franchising the con." I felt the old investigative fire burn back to life. "We can't let that die in a courtroom file," Ruiz agreed. She authorized a task force expansion and asked me to keep gathering witness statements. "You've built trust with the community," she said. "People talk to you. They don't talk to badges." So that's what I did. I drove across counties, meeting strangers in gas stations, diners, and library conference rooms. Everywhere I went, someone had a story, different neighborhoods, same tactics. Some victims were too embarrassed to come forward. Others were furious and eager to help. One man, a retired Navy engineer named Miller, handed me a USB stick. "Got something you'll want to see," he said. It contained hidden camera footage from inside his garage, showing the same suspects attempting to install a fake inspection notice on his breaker panel. The timestamp was 6 weeks before their arrest. Proof of trespassing, impersonation, and intent. I forwarded it to Ruiz immediately. Her response came within minutes. This confirms multi-jurisdictional activity. We're coordinating with state investigators. Excellent work. I wasn't used to hearing excellent work from law enforcement. Usually they were the ones I'd written about. By the third week, I'd compiled a 200-page dossier, the Faircrest Report. It chronicled every step from the first fake notice to the warehouse raid. Lawson asked if he could submit it as supplemental evidence in the federal case. I agreed on one condition, that the victims' names remain protected. He smiled. You really are still a journalist. Just one with better lighting, I said. The day of the preliminary hearing, the courthouse overflowed. Reporters lined the steps, cameras flashing as Clayton and Fallon were led inside in shackles. I watched from the back row beside Vivian, Lawson, and Ruiz. The judge read the charges aloud: wire fraud, identity theft, impersonation of government officials, criminal conspiracy, and extortion. When asked for a plea, Clayton looked up, voice flat. Guilty. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Fallon's attorney leaned over, whispering frantically, but she said nothing, just stared ahead, pale and rigid. The judge set sentencing for the following month and ordered restitution to all confirmed victims. Outside, the reporters swarmed again. One asked if I had a message for the community. I paused before answering. Don't trust a clipboard more than your common sense, I said. And don't assume authority equals truth. Ask for proof every time. That line ended up everywhere, from local TV to national news clips. By evening, my inbox was filled with hundreds of messages, people sharing their own HOA horror stories, some real, some absurd. But amid the noise, one email stood out. From info@cedarlinehoa.com. Subject: You stopped one branch. We're still here. No signature, no address. Just a grainy photo of my house taken from the street. I stared at it for a long moment, feeling the old tension return to my shoulders. The storm wasn't over yet. I forwarded it straight to Ruiz with one line. Looks like our sequel found us. She replied 2 minutes later. Then let's make the ending even better. And as the sun dipped behind the Virginia hills, I realized something. I hadn't just exposed a scam. I'd reignited the part of myself that lived for the truth, no matter how dangerous it got. 2 days after that cryptic email, I sat in my living room, staring at the image of my house on the screen. The photo was taken from just far enough away to make me wonder how long the person had been standing there. Ruiz and Lawson were both copied on my alert, and within an hour, 2 patrol cars quietly rolled by, lights off, but presence unmistakable. Still, the unease clung to me like humidity. Fraud was one thing, retaliation was another. I knew too many cases where exposure came with consequences. I locked every door, checked every window, and installed motion sensors across the property. The porch camera stayed live on my laptop, its green indicator blinking like a heartbeat. The next morning, Ruiz called. We traced the domain, cedarlinehoa.com. Registered in Florida but hosted in Delaware, same proxy company Faircrest used. Whoever sent that email is part of the same network, maybe a higher tier. Do they know who I am? Probably. But you're not their priority. They're scared. Someone's protecting what's left of the operation. Someone above Clayton. Exactly. She asked if I'd help again, this time as a consultant. You know how they think, how they manipulate documentation. We can use that insight. I almost laughed. You're recruiting a retired journalist as bait. Her voice didn't waver. We're recruiting you as expertise. You know their psychology, their rhythm, and you've already proven you can handle yourself. I looked around the room, the stacks of folders, the map on my wall, the empty chair, where my grandmother once Saturday. All right, I said. I'm in. By that afternoon, Ruiz briefed me and Dashiell in a small conference room at the sheriff's office. The FBI cyber unit had intercepted communications between several shell domains associated with Faircrest. One recurring name appeared: North Star Municipal Consulting. It billed itself as a property standards verification firm operating across 3 states. Its CEO, Richard Hanover, was a former real estate attorney disbarred for ethics violations 5 years earlier. Hanover founded Faircrest under a pseudonym, Ruiz explained, flipping through photos. Clayton and Fallon were just field operators. Hanover coordinated the logistics domain's payment processing shell accounts. He's the spider in the web. Dashiell leaned forward. So Cedarline is just his next skin. Ruiz nodded. We're setting a sting digital first, but we need them to believe they still have leverage. Daniel, that's where you come in. She slid a mock email across the table, drafted to look like a reply from me to Cedarline. It thanked them for clarifying jurisdiction boundaries and offered to discuss settlement to resolve outstanding misunderstandings. Hidden inside was a beacon, a traceable packet that would ping once opened. You really want to lure them out using my name, I asked. Only if you're comfortable with it, she said. We'll monitor every click. I stared at the message for a long moment. It felt strange, weaponizing words again, not for a story this time, but as bait. Send it, I finally said. The first ping came 6 hours later, Florida IP, Miami suburb. 30 seconds later, another from a VPN exit node in Virginia. Then a third from a laptop at a coffee shop only 15 miles from my house. They're here, Ruiz said. Cedarline has a local contact. Lawson coordinated the ground units while I monitored the feed with Dashiell. Every click from their devices gave us a new clue: internal documents, invoices, draft letters. They were planning another round of compliance sweeps, this time under a fake grant program called Neighborhood Restoration Initiative. It was genius in its simplicity, posing as government partners offering infrastructure improvement inspections for a $2,000 eligibility fee. Same scam, new costume. 2 nights later, Ruiz got the warrant. The team moved at dawn, converging on a small office suite in Stafford County. I wasn't supposed to go, but after months of living this, I couldn't just sit at home refreshing a news feed. I drove down anyway, parked a block away, and watched as agents in windbreakers filed through the glass doors. 10 minutes later, they escorted out a man in a blue blazer, gray hair, slicked back expression, calm and defiant. Richard Hanover. Even from a distance, I could tell he believed he'd walk free again. Ruiz met me outside after the arrest. We found their server, she said. Every transaction, every alias, every fake notice they ever sent. He's done. Inside the office, the walls were lined with whiteboards covered in flowcharts, target demographics, fee structures, communication scripts. It was like staring at the mind of an algorithm designed to exploit fear. On one board, written in bold marker, were 3 words: fear. Delay. Payment. That's their business model, I muttered. Ruiz nodded. And it's over. But when I scanned the evidence table, something caught my eye, a folder labeled Contingency Media. Inside were printed screenshots of news headlines, including my own. They'd been tracking the public reaction, calculating how to spin the story. One page even contained a draft press release claiming they were victims of defamation. I couldn't help but laugh. They were planning a PR defense. That's the ego talking, Ruiz said. People who build scams this complex always think they're the smartest ones in the room. By evening, the story hit the national news cycle. FBI shuts down multi-state HOA fraud ring, 54 victims identified. My phone lit up non-stop messages from former colleagues, reporters, even my old editor. One text stood out from a number I hadn't seen in years. Proud of you, Walker. You finally turned the pen on the real villains. Ed. I stared at it, smiling faintly. Maybe this was what redemption looked like, less glory, more grit. The next day, I drove to Vivian's. She was pruning her roses, humming softly. When she saw me, she set down her shears and hugged me tightly. So it's really over. For good, I said. They arrested the man running everything. You and everyone else will get full restitution once the court finalizes the asset seizures. She wiped a tear and laughed. You think my husband would have believed all this? The FBI in my backyard? Maybe not, I said, smiling. But he'd be proud of how you stood up. She nodded toward the garden bed between our properties. I was thinking of turning this patch into something new, a memorial garden for all the people who stood their ground. You and always, I said. That night, as twilight fell over Maplewood Road, I sat on my porch again. The breeze smelled faintly of roses and cut grass. Somewhere a dog barked. Life had resumed its gentle rhythm the way it used to be before fear crept into mailboxes. I looked down at the folder in my lap, the Faircrest Cedarline Report Final Edition. Inside was every lie they'd printed, every truth we'd uncovered, every person who refused to stay silent. When I closed it, I realized something: justice wasn't about loud victories. It was about quiet endurance, the kind that keeps you standing on your porch even after the storm passes, unafraid of what might come next. The day of sentencing arrived with a cold wind that swept across the courthouse square, rattling the flags and making the steps shine like marble under the gray Virginia sky. I parked 2 blocks away and walked the rest of the distance, every footstep heavy, with the memory of the past months, porch notices, sleepless nights, Vivian's trembling hands, and the endless stream of fake authority. Inside, the courtroom was packed. Victims filled the benches in neat, tense rows, retirees clutching folders, young families holding hands, people who had once believed they were alone. At the front, under the brass seal of the Commonwealth, sat Judge Pritchard, her expression carved in stone. The defendants were already there. Clayton Ruhr looked older than I remembered, his gray suit replaced by an orange jumpsuit. Fallon Reeves sat beside him, pale and shaking, avoiding every eye. At the defense table's end, Richard Hanover wore a smirk that made my blood run hot. He still thought this was business, a minor setback, a fine to pay before he found another loophole to crawl through. When the judge entered the room, went silent. The clerk read the charges aloud: wire, fraud, criminal impersonation, identity theft, conspiracy, obstruction, and witness intimidation. The list felt endless, each word striking like a hammer. Mr. Hanover, the judge said, finally, you were an attorney once. You knew exactly what these documents meant. You used that knowledge to create fear and profit from it. This court finds you guilty on all counts. Hanover's smirk faltered. She turned to Clayton and Fallon. And you two acted as his agents, targeting the elderly, the widowed, the vulnerable. You will each serve 5 years in state prison and pay restitution to your victims in full. Fallon began to cry, hands shaking as she whispered something to her lawyer. Clayton just stared at the floor, expression blank. Hanover's sentence was harsher: 15 years, federal time, no parole for the first 10. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. For a brief, strange second, I almost felt pity for him, the way you might pity a predator caught in its own trap. Then I remembered Vivian's fear, Harold's heart attack, the sleepless nights they'd inflicted on dozens of innocent people. The pity evaporated. Afterward, the judge invited several victims to give statements. Vivian went first. She stood, shoulders trembling but voice steady. You didn't just take our money, she said. You took our peace. But you didn't take our strength. Because once someone spoke up, we all did. And that's how you lost. Her words hung in the air like the toll of a bell. When it was my turn, I stepped to the podium. My hands didn't shake. You built your scam on silence, I said. You made people afraid of paper. But fear only works when no one checks the facts. We did. And now you're here. Hanover met my eyes briefly, and for the first time, I saw something new: recognition, maybe even respect twisted into resentment. The judge thanked me and dismissed the court. As the marshals led the defendants away, I turned to Vivian. She smiled through tears. It's over, she whispered. But as we stepped outside into the bright air, I realized something deeper. It wasn't just over. It had changed us. The community that once scattered behind locked doors had started gathering every Sunday in the little garden Vivian planted between our homes. We built raised beds from reclaimed wood, planted herbs and vegetables, and placed a small bronze plaque at the gate that read, "In honor of everyone who stood up." It wasn't fancy, but it meant everything. People stopped by daily to water the plants, share stories, or just breathe in peace they'd earned the hard way. Even Lawson came sometimes in plain clothes, bringing donuts and laughing with neighbors. 2 months after sentencing, the Faircrest Report became a formal exhibit in an FBI fraud training program. Ruiz invited me to speak at a conference in D.C. about how communities could identify scams early. I wasn't sure what to say at first. I wasn't a lawman or a lecturer. But when I stood on that stage and looked out at 100 agents taking notes, I found the words easily. It starts small, I told them. A letter, a phone call, a fake website. But what really gives these scams power isn't technology, it's fear and trust misplaced. The moment one person decides to verify, the whole illusion collapses. Truth doesn't shout, it just doesn't flinch. They applauded quietly, the professional kind of respect, and afterward Ruiz shook my hand. You've got a gift, Walker, she said. Ever consider consulting full-time? I chuckled. No thanks, I've got roses to tend. She smiled. Keep them safe. You never know when the next fake HOA will come knocking. Back home, life settled into its slow rhythm again. Dashiell's app, Verify Local, had gone viral, downloaded thousands of times by homeowners across the country. He'd even partnered with the Department of Housing to integrate real-time license verification. Every time I opened the app and saw the green check next to Maplewood Estates HOA, no active enforcement authority, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Sometimes I still got letters, real ones now, from people who'd watched the story unfold online. One woman from Arizona wrote, "Your video gave me courage to question a contractor trying to find me. I checked the records and found out he wasn't licensed. You saved me $6,000. Thank you." I pinned that letter above my desk next to my grandmother's photo. On warm evenings, Vivian and I sat in the garden and watched the sun dip behind the oak trees. You ever miss journalism? She asked one night. I thought about it. The deadlines, the headlines, the adrenaline. No, I said. I just changed my beat. Used to expose corruption for readers. Now I do it for neighbors. She laughed. You should put that on a t-shirt. I smiled. Maybe after the tomatoes ripen. As the twilight deepened, the garden lights flickered on small solar lanterns, casting golden halos across the beds. The roses glowed faintly, their scent drifting on the breeze. I leaned back, listening to the crickets and the distant hum of the highway, and felt something I hadn't in years completion. The porch, once a battleground, had become sanctuary again. The same boards where strangers once taped threats now held my boots and my coffee cup. Every creak felt like a heartbeat saying you did it right this time. And if someday another fake HOA or self-appointed authority came marching down Maplewood Road, waving photocopied power, I knew exactly what I'd do. Open the door, smile politely, and say, "Show me the seal." Because truth once learned doesn't fade. It grows like roses after the storm. This story isn't just about fraud, it's about the courage to question what others accept as unquestionable. Fear and paperwork are powerful tools, but only if we let them blind us. Whether it's a fake HOA, a forged signature, or someone claiming authority over your life, the answer is always the same: ask for proof. Vivian taught me that bravery doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it's an elderly widow filming her doorstep because something feels off. Sometimes it's a retired journalist picking up a camera again, not to chase fame, but to defend home. If you've ever been intimidated by a title, a clipboard, or a badge that didn't feel right, remember, authority is earned, not printed. Verify, question, document, share, and most importantly, stand together. If this story moved, you tell us where you're watching from, your city, your time zone, maybe your own HOA battle. Your comment could be the proof someone else needs to see they're not alone. Subscribe, stay alert, and never stop asking the one question that ended it all. For me, can you prove that?